Welcome to King Said So, Africa's one land, one language, one currency, one army on King Said So. Africans can unite. Your Pan-Africanist podcast. Enjoy.
We are delayed, comrades, because from 10 o'clock until just a few hours ago, we held a meeting with a Royal Majesty, Dr. Haboilelwe Moroka, who is Hosi of Barolong Bosleka in Tabanchu. So we had very extensive discussions about the process that we are engaged in. So Her Royal Majesty carries a lot of wisdom in terms of understanding of the institution of traditional leadership and broadly around issues of rural development. She was leading on behalf of the National House of Traditional Leaders a process which developed a master plan called the Invest Rural, an investment strategy that focuses on rural areas. So as part of this process, we as the leadership went to have interaction with Her Royal Majesty Moroka. So she's Moroka because from her family comes the 7th president of the organization which was founded here in Bloemfontein as the South African Natives National Congress on the 8th of January 1912. Dr. J.S. Moroka, who originally comes from Tabanchu, which she is royalty over. And that 7th president, Dr. J.S. Moroka, had succeeded someone who was the 3rd and 5th president of the South African Natives National Congress, called Zakaria Richard Mahabane. So that is the rich history which we got to interact with, of a family which comes from that rich history. And of interest as well is that we were also interacting with the biological children of Dr. J.S. Moroka. It's important, comrades, that we speak about that slight history because the process which we are here for, to some degree, is reminiscent and reflective of the process which was started after the launch of what became known as the Union of South Africa, the unification of the 4 provinces to become the Union of South Africa, the Transvaal, Natal, Cape, and the Orange River Colony where we are. So after that unification of the 4 provinces, which were colonial settlements, Pixley Kaisaka Seme, who was a student outside of South Africa overseas, wrote extensively to say that black people should unite to form a liberation movement or an organization that must represent all of them. And he was far much younger. He was in his early 30s in terms of age. And he was able to assemble religious leaders and royal leaders here in Bloemfontein. And the reason why Bloemfontein was the chosen venue for the meeting in 1912 was because Bloemfontein geographically is at the center of South Africa. So if you come from the other end of Musina, from the other side in Cape Town, from the other side in Umhlaba Lingana, from the other side in Kabeja, so you will more or less arrive at the same time if you are coming to Bloemfontein. So that historically has been a central space for national deliberations that got to define the history of South Africa's politics. Now, comrades, we are here as a Maibuye consultation process in the province of the Free State to want to listen to volunteers of Maibuye here in the province to give us their honest reflections about the possible formation of a political movement which will be registered as a political party but will lead a political movement. There's a difference between a political movement and a political party. We will explain in greater detail what is the difference between the two. But the mandate that we are working on is on whether we should constitute a political movement which should exist as an instrument, a fighting instrument in the hands of the colonized and oppressed masses of our people. Because for many years, the black majority and Africans in particular have been promised the fruits and benefits of so-called freedom. 1994 happened as first inclusive elections for all people who reside in this part of the African continent. And that came with the promise that such is going to be accompanied by a better life for all. But it appears 31 years after, there is no better life. This freedom is in terms of the economy have got to demonstrate the fact that we'll share our that had it. Africa, South Africa is still an enclave of white capitalist control. South Africa is still a neo-colony whose mineral resources, natural resources continue to enrich and benefit colonial settlers and invaders that have taken everything that defines us. They've taken our land, they've taken our mineral resources, they've taken our animals. So majority of animals here in South Africa today are owned by colonial settlers, be it cattle, goats, sheep, elephants, everything. Majority of animals are owned by the colonial settlers. Since they repossessed us, they dispossessed us, they continue to reproduce on the same. So we want everything, but also they took our identity. They eroded just what it means to be us as black people. We even doubt our own knowledge systems. We even doubt our healthcare systems and healing systems. They even got to caricature and destroy our healing systems. You know, to the extent that even legitimate traditional healers are referred to as witch doctors, as if it's possible for one person to be a witch and be a doctor at the same time. That is how the system of colonialism got to erode everything else that is us. And comrades, we should take note that since the arrival of colonial settlers, there have been wars of resistance against colonial invasion. So you know, in the wars of resistance against colonial invasion, it was a relay race. You know, in a relay race is when in sporting activities or in athletics, it's when four people are running in the same race, they've got the same purpose of finishing the race. So in the relay race of the struggle against colonialism and apartheid, we started with those who fought the wars of resistance, they were fighting with spears. In the beginning, they used to fight with the long spears which they used to throw. And they realized that the throwing of the spears was dispossessing them of their defense mechanism or attack mechanism, because the colonial settlers had superior superpower and gunpowder to defeat all of them. And then later on it evolved into now handheld spears, which on very rare occasions few battles were won against colonial invaders. But in those wars against colonial invaders, there are very few battles which ourselves we won as black people. But overall, we lost the war. So as black people in this part of the African continent, the South, we are still a conquered people who are defeated by colonial settlers. And how do you see that? We are still landless. We are still subjects of colonial settlers. There is nothing that has fundamentally changed that defines majority on average of black people in South Africa, despite the so-called attainment of freedom and emancipation. So in this relay race, there came the generation that I spoke about of freedom fighters who started the political parties, the generation of Pixley Isaac Aseme, of Sifako Makhato, of John Langalibalele Dube, of Z.R. Mahabane, of J.S. Moroka, of Sol Plaatje, and those who said that let's take the fighting button, now let us think that we will fight through unification. But they still did not win the war. In that relay race, there came a generation which said, freedom in our lifetime. The generation of Apim Dow, of Nelson Mandela, of Robert Mangaliso Sobuku, of Nelson Mandela, of Oliver Tambo, of Walter Sisulu. They too did not win the battle in the relay race of true freedom and emancipation. There came a generation after that of the Black Consciousness Movement, of Steve Bantu Biko, of Tsetsi Mashinini, of Khotso Seatlholo, the most militant component of the freedom fighters against apartheid. They too did not win the battle for total emancipation. And of course, out of the 1976 generation that confronted apartheid, the apartheid system, machinery, and governance began to be shaken to its foundations and went to the negotiation table to hand over political power and retained economic power. Actually, during the negotiations, one of the representatives of Anglo-American said that at the end of the day, these negotiations must work and the rhetoric must be dropped and business must continue to do business as usual. And that is what they got to achieve. There have been so many generations that tried to fight for true emancipation and have not achieved that. But we must take note, comrades, that in the relay race, you know, when you are running a relay race, you are running forward. There are those who will take the button and run backward and reverse some of the gains which could have taken us to some degree of progress. So we are saying now that as a generation, we should take what was the common thread of all these freedom fighters. When those who founded the South African Natives National Congress met here in Bloemfontein, when they met to found the South African Natives National Congress, their clarion call was, "Maibuye Africa." when the freedom in our lifetime generation of the 1940s developed the program of action that got to revolutionize the liberation movement. Their clarion call was Maibuye Africa. When the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania wanted to radicalize the struggle outside of the Congress movement, yes, the clarion call was isolate, but the principle and clarion call was Maibuye Africa. When the South African Students' Organization was founded out of the racist NUSAS, the clarion call was Maibuye Africa. When the June 16 generation resisted the imposition of apartheid and rejected all the apartheid laws and system, the clarion call was Maibuye Africa. So we as this generation are taking the baton from all those generations under the clarion call of Maibuye Africa and committing that we are going to run the race until the finish line. That is what defines this movement. And the reason we're doing so is because that the instruments, the formations that are supposed to be our vehicles to freedom are not such. The ANC is not an instrument for liberation. It has demonstrated to the people of South Africa beyond doubt that the ANC will not bring about any freedom. The landlessness, the joblessness, the homelessness, the hopelessness is what continues to define the people which the African National Congress promised to liberate and emancipate. The saddest reality is that what appears, what was supposed to be the two alternatives to the African National Congress are not true liberation forces. Mkhonto weSizwe and the economic freedom fighters are not liberation forces, are forces of self-enrichment by those who lead it. That is the fact that we are confronted with. Are forces that do not have capacity to mobilize the whole of society towards true emancipation and freedom. That is why we say that let's pause and listen to all the people of South Africa. Let's listen to traditional leaders or royal leaders. Let's listen to religious leaders in all corners of South Africa. Let's listen to all the people of South Africa on what is to be done. What do we do moving forward? Because we have been sold a dummy of freedom. What we're experiencing now is not freedom. So, comrades, we have started in the province of Limpopo. We interacted with traditional leadership and volunteers of Maibuye in the province. And we are here today in the Free State to listen to all the regions of the Free State. We want to hear from all the volunteers from Tavomo Futsanyana, from Malut Apofung, from Pumelela, from Mantsupa, from Sitsoto, from Ditlabeng. We need to hear from all the comrades and volunteers from Fezile from Mafube, from Mwate, from Okaka, from Metsimahulu, as to what is to be done. We need to hear from the comrades from the Joleputsa of all the dysfunctional municipalities of Machabe, of Masilo Nyan, of all those municipalities which are still under the super exploitation of the farm owners there. This province has got the highest number of voting stations in farms. And during votings, they disallow other political parties to participate in elections. That is why we have got unreasonable votes that are acquired by both the Freedom Front Plus and the Democratic Alliance in this province. Because these white farm owners, they lock up their workers and they possibly vote them with a torch and say, why are you voting? With a torch to make sure that they vote. Because the number of votes which the Freedom Front and the DA receives in black majority farms are not explainable. It's not possible that in secret any person can vote for their oppressors. It's not practical. But if you go and check the results of the farm VDs, here you will realize that they are an anomaly. We want to listen to the people of Mangaung, of Bochabela, of Tabanchu. We want to listen to the people of Karib in all the 3 municipalities that do not have any signs of development, neglected Mohokar. So that is where we are. And comrades, be rest assured that in our listening, we have views as well. We have perspective. We can make an analysis of just what is happening here in South Africa and all the provinces. And one of the views and part of the views that we have is that even if you can pray, even if you can vote in a majority, we will not volunteer to be an organization that is going to be controlled by white people. We are not going to agree to be an organization that is going to serve the interest of the capitalists. We are not going to agree to be an organization that disrespects traditional leadership and religious leadership. We are not going to agree to be an organization that disregards Ubuntu. We are not going to agree to be an organization that promotes corruption. We are not going to agree to be an organization that defends corruption and wrongdoing in the state. So there are certain values that define us as well. But we are willing to volunteer for a revolutionary project that is going to bring about true freedom. What we are here to listen to is what should distinguish this movement from all these existing political parties. Our people are legitimately concerned. Even where we come from now, one of the members of the Royal Council said that, but these political parties have been making promises after promises. How are you going to be different? And that is how we should now sit to discuss how are we going to be different here in the Free State province as Maibuya. There is not a single functional municipality in this province. Not a single one, not even here in Mangaung, which is supposed to be a metropolitan municipality. There is no direction in terms of what is happening. There is just people playing factional games, imposing their friends and people they call mentors to be mayors here. How do we liberate ourselves from such a conundrum? So comrades who are here to listen, all of us will pay attention and let us be at liberty to speak openly about any issue. If you are not yet convinced about this project, you can speak as well and express your view. If there are areas that you need clarity on, you can speak as well to say, if we were to form a party or movement, how are we going to handle the following issues of factionalism, of gatekeeping, of infiltration? Every view is allowed to be expressed in the consultation process. So that at the end of the day, we can boldly say that we have spoken to all the people of South Africa. And this is the outcome of what we have got to listen and hear from all the corners of South Africa. Comrades, we're going to hand over back to the chairperson. We're here to listen, and we're going to listen attentively. Thank you very much. Maibuye. Yeah, Africa. Maibuye. Yeah, Africa. Thank you very much.